Welcome to Sales Bites by Journey, where we talk about everything you need to know to be a killer at sales. I'm your host, Will Jenkins. Let's get it. Hello, and welcome to Sales Bites by Journey. Today we have Cassie Quien, VP of Commercial at REPOWR. Cassie, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Will. I'm excited to chat with you.
Absolutely. It's crazy. You're one of the people that I feel like I've known for longer than I actually have because of LinkedIn. Like I meet all my internet friends in real life at conferences and stuff. So it was a pleasure to meet you at the Broker Carrier Summit. I was like, oh my gosh, I've known you, but I really didn't. So it's cool.
I know. I made you give me a hug because I'm like, I know you, but we've never met. So that was cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. So really appreciate you joining Sales Bites today. Before we dive in with your intro, I would love to hear your fun fact.
Okay. My fun fact, this took me a minute to kind of think of, but I own over 300 pair of shoes.
Whoa.
So I am an avid shoe collector, and it's really sad now because I've worked from home. Like I've worked fully remote for the last 3 to 4 years. So I don't really get to wear them. So when I go to conferences, like where we saw each other, I was actually just in Chattanooga earlier this week, visiting REPOWR. I pack the biggest suitcase because I bring like 8 to 10 pair of shoes for 2 days. So honestly, huge shoe collector.
I also like shoes, but I don't have that many, and I can respect a good shoe game. So love that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a 10,000 foot overview of some of the stuff that you've done in your career, then we'll dive in and talk some sales bites.
Yeah, for sure. Actually kind of funny. I feel like it starts best with shoes. Before I got into transportation, I actually sold shoes at Nordstrom just on the sales floor in college. And that was probably my favorite job I've ever had. Sorry to my employer or prior employers, but I loved the hustle of working in a full commission environment and just that customer interaction. But getting into transportation, once I graduated school, I didn't really know what to do with a marketing degree. And I have a brother who's in the industry, and he said, why don't you apply at a trucking company? So I worked at an asset-based trucking company in the Minneapolis area for around 7 years after school, and did every role from dispatching drivers, planning trucks, like throughout the whole operation, to then progress into like leadership roles, largely customer facing.
Nice.
So I have a strong asset background, a lot of time in that space. And then prior to joining REPOWR, I spent a couple years at Freightbana, another startup in the industry, which you guys are probably familiar with. And that's where I think I discovered my love for trailers and like what that means to our industry. Learned some really cool things there. Did an awesome journey on the sales side. And then I met the REPOWR team, and what we're doing in this space is really just connecting a lot of that excess trailer capacity that's out there with all these different drivers or brokers who need access to trailers, but aren't looking to get into like lease agreement or actually have the capital to purchase their own trailers. So
nice.
I'm only 1 month in with REPOWR, but it has been phenomenal. This team is just brilliant. And I think there's just an incredible road ahead for what we're going to do.
Absolutely. You guys have a great team, and congrats on the new role. I know that you're going to keep crushing it. So it's really cool to hear a little bit of how you got to where you are. We are going to dive into emotional intelligence. That's one of the topics that you wanted to attack. So tell us a little bit about that and how to develop emotional intelligence in sales.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't know if I can give you advice on how to develop it, but I can tell you where it's important.
Yeah.
I think that one of the biggest things about having emotional intelligence, especially in a sales function, is that a buyer often values the experience they have just as much as they value or see value in the product or service that they're going to sign up for and purchase. So that initial experience is so heavily a part of the salesperson who's conducting it before it gets passed off to their teams or you get integrated between the two businesses.
I'm writing that down because it's such a good point. They value the experience as much as the product. So if you're not tuned in on that, you're probably going to miss a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. And I think you can, or at least I, like in just different conversations through over the years, see that the most firsthand in some of those first conversations, especially over the last several years when we're in such a virtual environment. I think salespeople are often quick to get on an introductory call or a demo And if it's a 30-minute call, that salesperson has like 27 minutes of the talk time because they just want to get out every single thing they can say about their company. And if you're on the other end of that, we all probably have been on the end. Everyone's always being sold to in some capacity. You're like, well, that person didn't care about anything I had to say or think. Like, I don't,
Nothing.
how do you move that forward?
That's tough because it's often common for newer reps to like word vomit all these things because they're still working through how to figure out their pitch.
Yeah.
And the best sales professionals do significantly more listening and then targeted questions than just dropping information.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even sometimes though people might be uncomfortable in silence, it's really good. It's okay to have a minute where someone's maybe digesting what you just went through. You don't have to fill it if there's silence. And oftentimes if you let there be a little silence, the customer or prospect you're speaking to, they will fill it for you and you'll get information you didn't know you needed.
You are dropping absolute heat right now because being comfortable with silence, it's so hard when you first start in sales because it feels so awkward.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if you just shh for a second, like you said, you get really good information you would not have gotten.
Yeah. I think go ahead.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was just going to say, I think that kind of plays in with like being able to read the room, which is a high skill of someone who has emotional intelligence. If you can see that someone's glazed over, or if it's virtual and they're just typing away, like not paying attention to you, being able to see that, take a minute and like redirect your conversation, get them re-engaged instead of just continuing to plow through your pitch and what you're talking through.
Totally. So you've been in a lot of different really strong organizations. You've led people. You've also sold at a whole bunch of different levels. Talk to me about where emotional intelligence plays in at the, let's go, sales level. So as you're working through opportunities, and then leadership level. So as you're leading people.
Yeah. I honestly think like a lot of it goes hand in hand. I don't think there's a huge differentiation. I mean, somebody who has high emotional intelligence, they're just very self-aware of their actions. And so you're self-aware when you're having a sales conversation. Some of those things we just spoke through, like you understand how you're presenting yourself. And I think it's largely like very similar to when you're leading people, regardless of how high up you're leading. Are you self-aware of how you're interacting with others? And both sides of that, you need empathy. And you need to be able to listen, reflect, and have just like a high level of understanding of how that person is interacting with you. And I think like a lot of that is also being able to be adaptable. I don't think it necessarily splits between a sales call versus how you interact with other people. If you have it, you know how to adapt based on the conversation at hand.
I think the adaptability part is so huge in sales in general. But just, hey, something happens. How do you work through it and not let that throw you off and then keep things moving forward? But the emotional intelligence aspect of it is, okay, and maybe you get a response that you don't necessarily love, right?
Yep.
Like, is it all over your face? How's your body language? Stuff like that. That's big to be able to just roll with the punches.
Yeah, that like maintaining composure. I would say like, personally for me, in front of like a client or with a customer, I can maintain composure better. One-on-one with people I know, like my face says everything. Yeah. So, I mean, we all have areas we have to work on, but maintaining your composure and how you respond to something, it just goes very far in just overall how you conduct yourself.
Totally. Do you have anything that you've learned over the years? Let's go back early career to now that you think has helped you develop your emotional intelligence? Because I think there are probably times, at least in my career, where I'm like, I handled that immaturely. Like I probably should have approached that differently. And I can look back at it now and say, but in the moment, I didn't handle it great.
For sure. I would say for me, starting in an operational environment, especially in transportation, people are so quick to just fly off the handle. They get angry, and if something fails, you're only dealing with problems in that type of an environment. Right. So the temper can be quick, your tongue can be sharp. So I would say like early on, some of the people that like maybe I learned from, I would mirror some of that because it would get stuff done. But then I quickly realized, and this goes back to our conversation around building those internal relationships, like over a long time, big picture, you get a heck of a lot further if you're like have your composure and you remain kind and thoughtful in what you're doing. But I would definitely say starting in like an ops environment in this industry, I switched some of those behaviors early on.
A lot of times you can see stuff that doesn't work, or maybe doesn't make you feel good. Like, you've gotten a response from somebody and you're like, I don't feel good about how that, like, I don't like that.
Oh yeah.
So it's good to be able to absorb that and go, okay, I'm not going to manage people that way, or that's not how I'm going to respond to stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, I'm not going to engage with this right now until I'm at a point where I can like show up how I want to.
Totally. I want to run something past you that I've thought for a while, just because I know when you respond to someone, that how they receive it doesn't matter how you meant it. Their perception of it is the reality of what the situation is. So over my career, I've had to learn and be really, really tactful about delivering information to make it easy to absorb, and let's not have 1,000 different interpretations of it, because you don't want to misrepresent it. But that has taken like years and years of managing people. Have you worked through that? Because for me, I'm like, let's say this the right way, whether it's text or actually a conversation, so that it's not perceived incorrectly.
Yeah. Like, actually, that's a good one that you bring up. There's a thought that came right to my head when you say that, and depending on the message that you're delivering, but like lead with facts, not feelings. So lead with as much, like read something through and remove any words that can emote a feeling or give someone a different interpretation of what you're saying, especially if you're just communicating a message or, something important. Like, remove any feelings that you might be able to project onto someone else in the words you're using if it's written. I think that's something that I have learned over the years, and I try really hard to make sure it's not that there's little emotion in the right setting. I mean, sometimes it's good to be vulnerable and super emotional, but I save that more for like a conversation when you can hear the tone.
Totally. That is a skill. That is absolutely a skill. Because in our industry, there's a lot of stuff that happens on the phone. You'll have conversations, but text, emails, Slack, all that stuff, you got to be cognizant of how those things can be read, and you can't really hear tone in a Slack.
No, you can make up whatever one you want.
Yeah. Awesome. So I took a couple of notes on the things you mentioned. This was incredible. Couple here. A buyer often values the experience as much as the product. So you need to be aware of what that experience is throughout that sales process. You need to be adaptable. A huge part of emotional intelligence is adaptability. Maintain your composure, and then lead with facts, not feelings. Really good stuff.
Yeah. Anything
else to add, Cassie?
I think the only last thing I would say is like, be human, be authentic, be yourself. People can read through when you're not, and you don't do yourself a service if you're trying to show up like someone else. That would be the only thing I'd add.
Respect. Well, I really appreciate you joining us today on Sales Bites. Incredible stuff. Thank you for walking us through some of your career and the way that you look at emotional intelligence. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Will. It was fun.
Awesome. We'll catch you later. Thank you.